Good evening from Dubai, good afternoon, Europe, and good morning, America and Canada. So we are back with another webinar. Interesting topic, how can brands transition from Web2 to Web3? I searched on Google when deciding on a topic and this showed up. So I thought, let's touch the sweet spot. Let's have a conversation around this. So let's do the intros first. And I guess I'll go first. My name is Sharad Agarwal. I'm the Chief Metaverse Officer of CyberGear. It's a digital agency I started back in 1996. So I've pretty much seen the evolution of the web from Web 1 to Web 2, and now we are trying to be Web 3. So it's been an amazing ride, a great journey, and a lot of learnings, which we will all be sharing with you. I'm going to go to my amazing panelists who are from across the world, different continents. Some are in academia, some are in the commercial world, some are metapreneurs. So yeah, we have a lot to talk about. Note for the audience, do let us know which part of the world you are coming in from. And also I'd like you to rate yourself, on a 0 to 10 point scale, where you think you are with your knowledge of Web3. It'll be interesting to note, for example, you are 4 or 6 right now. I'd also like to see where you are after 60 minutes, right? So that will be the reality check. And I hope we can take you 0 to 10 in 60 minutes flat. That's our challenge and my challenge to the panelists. So let's do the intros. I'll go to Laura Pan first. Laura, please introduce yourself to our audience.
Hi everyone, I'm Laura Pan. I am currently in Malaysia because I'm on my vacation, but I'm happy to do this because it's a topic I really, really love. I am actually a professor of international business and luxury strategy, but more recently I've moved towards new technology. I've authored a book, and part of that book I talked a little bit about blockchain technology and also connective technology like AI, for example. And I got in touch with Sharad quite recently because I think I've been posting a lot about the transition from for luxury companies, particularly from Web 2 to Web 3. And so this is really a topic that I'm super, super interested in, and I would love to kind of talk about it more.
Thanks, Laura. Let's go to Dr. Martha.
Yeah, thanks a lot. Also, I'm on holidays. I'm in Spain right now. I'm very happy to join today, and I'm the Dean and Partner of the Metaverse Academy. At the same time, what we do is also real use cases. So we work with companies to exactly what you were talking about, help them to transition from Web 2 to Web 3. And bring this all together in a very nice experience. And what we recognize is that a lot of people still don't really understand what it is and how it feels. So we have developed the Metaverse Academy. We had the first cohort in the class, which was very exciting. And we train in the Metaverse. So it's quite different from what you see normally, that you have the front-to-front online store in Zoom or in other mediums if people talk about the Metaverse. So I think it's very important you have the experience. We also do regular free updates on the Metaverse, which you can join in Spatial, which I find very interesting. We do that via live stream and in Spatial. It's very, very easy to join. So we really would love to see you there, and also make sure that you have the experience also to talk to other people in the terms of advising them, or maybe even for yourself. So we have a lot of company representatives in the education, but we also do tailor-made for special classes on all levels. It's really for everyone, everywhere in the Metaverse, about the Metaverse. So very exciting. My background is I'm 20 years in financial services. So I'm a financial services executive. I've been always in digital transformation innovation, and the last 2 years more towards the Metaverse. I've been at UBS and also at AXA, at UniCredit. So all the big companies, you can say. I've also created my own startup, and now I'm fully dedicated to Web3 and the Metaverse, and it helps me a lot to understand also companies better if they come with the sort of legacy they have and transition from Web 2 to Web3.
Thank you, Dr. Martha. Let's go to Canada. Janelle, are you also on vacation?
I was on vacation, which is why I'm slacking. I don't have the background, and Sharad said I gave him the heebie-jeebies, so Sorry about the slacking. But Janelle Shaluhi, and I'm in Waterloo, Ontario, which is actually the birthplace of Ethereum. For those of you who are not aware, it was built 5 minutes from my house at the University of Waterloo. And I am the CEO and founder of Venusverse, which is Canada's first NFT collection, educational session. So we also have educational streams specifically for women getting into Web3, and Incubator, which will also be in the metaverse as well. So come from a background of tech within the last 10 years, especially I've been at Communitech and had an immersive background in tech with both startups and with innovation and digital transformation. And prior to that, I was at the University of Waterloo. And before that, basically just doing a lot of fundraising and nonprofit management and business development across the US and the world, to be completely honest, between the Middle East, Europe, and US and Canada.
Amazing. Let's go to Pierre.
Hi, everyone. My name is Pere Perez. I'm currently the founder and CEO of MetaCampus. I've been working in the digital space for almost 25 years now. In the last 10 years, in my previous company, we've been building virtual reality applications for brands and social goods from all over the world, from the World Bank to Nike and Apple. And last year, decided to jump into Web3, as we see this is the biggest social revolution that is ahead of us. More than a tech revolution, we understand this as a social revolution and a time for building a better digital society for the future. And at MetaCampus, we help professionals and brands to fully grasp the Web3 culture, and really we're trying to decentralize the professional mindset, helping them to build new, more shared business models, and really add value to the community and see how they can actually transform their company, as an evolution of the digital transformation we've seen from the last 10 years into the future decentralization services.
Thank you. Amazing. Let's head to UK and meet Naveen.
Hello, everyone. Thanks for having me. I'm not on holiday either, I'm afraid. I've been doing childcare this week, so my mind's a bit erratic all over the place. But I'm in the process of developing a platform to store digitals, luxury digitals in specific. So it's storing digitals with the added utility of asset management, very typical asset management, and then taking it a step further to offer a marketplace too. I'm probably the least techie person here, I think, today on the panel. I think we discovered that before we came on, and I couldn't work out how to work my background. So the advantages that has, though, is I in these sort of scenarios, I'm the one that asks the really stupid basic questions, and I answer the questions in a really basic way as well, right? And I often think that that's kind of how our consumers need to be switched onto this space.
Yeah, Naveen, you're doing fine, if that makes you feel better.
I unmuted myself, did I? That's good.
All right. So I may request the panelists to share their LinkedIn profiles in the chat so our audience can connect with you. So let's start from the very beginning. Let's start with definitions. What is Web 1? What is Web 2? What is Web 3? Let's not assume that everybody knows all of it. So in terms of definitions, I want to share my experience in a bit. I dared to prepare a Web3 glossary some 6 weeks back and came up with 50 odd terms, which I put out there, got a lot of traction, and people kind of liked what we were doing. And then I realized funnily that, when I went to do an update, which was last week, it went to 175 pages. So 50 terms to 175 in 6 weeks, a real story. That's how fast this industry is moving. You blink and you miss it. So here's the deal, audience. Please, continue to learn. There are a lot of resources out there. There are a lot of good people in communities you need to attach yourself to, and you got to learn continuously. So I have shared already in the chat the link to the glossary, which I have now promised to update every 4 weeks. So we will try and keep you up to speed. So let's start again with the definitions. I'm going to go to Laura Pan because, this is what she teaches. This is her day job. She is teaching students in a university in Italy all about Web3. So let her educate us on the evolution of the internet, how it started and where we are today. And Laura, your challenge is to do it in 2 to 3 minutes flat.
Okay, I'll try. So generally, I would try to break this down as basic as possible. So we obviously know the internet, but the internet has in few years developed very different iterations. The very first one is what we call Web 1. It was something that we experienced in the 1990s. This is basically a static website where you read information. Most of the time, the information is downloaded from somewhere and then it's put onto the website. You are not allowed to basically share your opinions or add on to it. So a great example of this is Britannica. So Britannica is kind of like an encyclopedia back then, and you were able to kind of get information from there. And then in the 2000s, we kind of developed a second iteration of the internet. And this is what we now call Web 2. Web 2 is what we're experiencing now, and it's a read-write kind of situation. You're able to read information, absorb them, but also you can also contribute and share. And this really created what we call the sharing economy. So we have influencers now, we have people who write blogs, for example, and this is, and they're able to share, but at the same time, a lot of this is centralized, right? So we look at companies like, for example, Instagram or WhatsApp or Facebook. All of that is owned by Meta. And so we don't really have much control over it. We're just contributing. And the third iteration of the internet is kind of a liberation of all of the centralization, where we move into decentralization. And that kind of started around the 2020s. Web3, which is now we're moving towards, is centered around decentralization, where you have the ability to have better control over the things you create. So you may create an artwork and you can launch it as an NFT. You can write a blog post and you can launch it as an NFT. Other people can kind of contribute to it or also own pieces of your work. And it's basically what we now know as the creator economy. So this is very, very general, but the word Web3 only wasn't discovered in the last 2 years. Rather, it was kind of coined by Gavin Wood, who was one of the founders or co-founders of the Ethereum network, as Janelle has kind of mentioned. And he mentioned this in 2014, if I'm not mistaken. And basically, he talked about he believed that the internet today is predominantly controlled by the FANGs, or now we call MANGs, because Facebook has changed itself to Meta. So it's Meta, Amazon, Alphabet, and Google, just to give you an example. And basically his idea is that everything is centralized, controlled, and stored on their network. But when we talk about a decentralized network, it means that we will have more democratic vision of it, and we will have our access to our own creations. So just to give you a very, very good and easy, simple example. So if you own an iPhone, right? When you do your face recognition, all of that data of your facial data points, it's all stored on your personal iPhone. It's not stored in any of Apple's database. You can Google this yourself. And this is a good example of decentralization. Whereas recently, MasterCard had announced that they're gonna allow facial recognition biometrics to do credit card transactions. However, when you do that with MasterCard, they keep a lot of the data points of your face with a third party or with MasterCard themselves. So it's a centralized system. So you don't own your face data points anymore when you sign up to MasterCard's face recognition. But with an iPhone, you own it in your device. So if you want to have a good example of what is decentralization and centralization, this is a good example of it. to kind of move forward. So I hope this is kind of very simple and I'm keeping to the time.
Yeah, just to summarize for our audience, Web 1 was read only, Web 2 was read and write, and Web 3, we can also own our own digital assets. So that's the big deal, owning, monetizing, and decentralization. Janelle, I'll go to you to add to that definition of Web 3.
Sure. Yeah, no, Laura did an awesome job. But the one thing I would add is that to the point of being decentralized, it's very much a peer-to-peer network. So not only with art and digital assets, but what we have the opportunity to do is actually create this world where we're all entrepreneurs, technically, and we're all engaging peer-to-peer. So we don't have to necessarily go through any centralized entities, and we can work peer-to-peer, to Laura's point. The one example I will also give, and I give this example fairly often, is a home in St. Petersburg, Florida, was sold, but the deed was listed as an NFT on the blockchain. So obviously, when the NFT is listed on the blockchain, obviously that transaction's captured, it's cryptographically inscribed. There's no way to reverse it. It can't be tampered with. But what they were able to do, and if any of you know the Western world and what the kind of hoops we have to jump through in order to get a home, you have to have, obviously the credit score, you have to go through the bank to get a loan, you have to go through a realtor, you have to go through lawyers. But what they were able to do is transact peer-to-peer. So the person who purchased the home purchased it as an NFT, the deed is an NFT, and the transaction went from one wallet, one digital wallet, directly to the other digital wallet. So that's an example of how this new world has actually created an economy where we all can participate. The one thing I always like to add on to that is that we should all be participating for good. So clearly we have a bunch of systems right now across the globe, whether it's economic, social, political, they're simply just not working. They're just not working anymore. They're not, the structures are dated in many different ways. What Web3 has the ability to do is actually give us a chance to reset some of those systems and create better systems moving forward, where we can all be more equitable, where we can share in our economy, where we can help each other. And that's the beauty of the spirit of Web3, is actually the communities that have been created and the people that are coming together to build these amazing new platforms or new worlds to live in. So that's the other thing I would add to Web3 is it's a chance to reset. It's a chance to embed ESG, environmental, social, and governance opportunities into everything we do. And that's how we should be thinking of it moving forward.
Thank you, Janelle. That's a great explanation. I'm going to go to Dr. Martha to explain to us what is the big deal about Web3.
Yeah, I think the two ladies have said quite a lot already, which is very relevant and true and given amazing examples. So for me also, it's important that we know what is a metaverse and what is Web3, because quite often this gets mixed up. You have that also very often in your talks. So if we put it just into words, then I would say simplified, the metaverse is more about the experiences, and the experiences are not only the virtual, they're really interacting also with the real world. And Web3 is almost the underlying technology. We have heard about blockchain, we heard about NFTs, non-fungible tokens, to being used, and a lot of that is basically also being used in the metaverse, but which doesn't mean it's only used there. So the example we heard before was the NFT for the house, for a real house. So there's a lot of interconnectivity between these two worlds, and one benefits the other. And the opportunity we have here, and I think that's also what previously was said, which I think is very important, is to have more inclusion, more inclusiveness. So if you think about disabled people, how you can activate them, what they can do much more in the virtual world than they have done, you can serve those people better, and they can participate. They even can exercise jobs. Yeah? So of all ages, that's one point. And there are lots of other opportunities where we can be more inclusive and have also more opportunities for, in my space, also for people who are underbanked. But there is a lot of effort, I think, needed to get into this direction, because on the other hand, we have all the big techs which are trying to grab the market, and they are definitely, like Meta is zero decentralized, is everything in their world, and they're trying to capture everything. And we have mentioned digital wallets. So they are now also developing a digital wallet where you certainly are the owner of the wallet, but you have the digital identity there, you can buy crypto, but with Meta in their ecosystem, I'm not quite sure how much you really own that.
Cool. I'm going to go to Perez to ask you what are your students asking about Web3? Like, what are the frequently asked questions?
Right. So they normally come to the program, from a no knowledge or a more like reading knowledge from the news, from the articles, especially on marketing strategies and campaigns. What they don't have a clue at the beginning is actually the underlying culture that is being built with tokenized communities in Web3 and decentralized brand economies. Also, the impact of the new virtual brands that they're coming into the States, and that they will be very shortly start becoming strong competitors for traditional brands. Because as Dr. Martha was saying, if the metaverse, it is about experiences, one of the differences between the digital era that we come from, of the e-commerce, is that a lot of the trade, a lot of the consumption happens within those virtual environments. So you do have those circular economies happening there, and there are hardly any barriers of entry. So that means that many Web3 project creators can establish brands, can provide virtual services, can generate communities, and those become, the real threat. So they're coming more from a marketing perspective on how we can, bring our brands into the space. But what they leave from there is fully understanding that, this is actually, it is a part of a full digital transformation of the company. You need to get compliance involved. You need to get legal people involved. You need to get the finance people involved. Because at the moment, a lot of the brands, they're not even able to register their ENS domains, their .de domains, because they don't have a digital wallet, they don't have crypto, they're not prepared, and when the biggest issues that they have normally with creating campaigns in decentralized virtual platforms like Sandbox or Decentraland is who buys that virtual land. They're not ready, to hold some of those assets. Even the agencies, for them, they struggle because that is like giving financial advice to the clients. So those issues, the marketing departments, they need to work very, very closely with the operational sides and more also with the privacy that is more important now with Web3, decentralized identities. You're going to need to start recruiting people to help you either audit your smart contracts or, giving you a hand to complement the project, that they're not docs, there are profiles, there are wallets, and they do have the credibility in the industry. But even from a compliance perspective, how do you convert your business so that rather than having a huge supplier form, you're actually able to start working with people without knowing their personal details. So that's, the biggest questions is more, we came here more trying to see this as a marketing campaign, but this is not a marketing campaign. This is actually, we need to transform our businesses.
Yeah, super. I've said this many times that, Web3 is not only about technology, it's also about the mindset. And for brand leaders, you can't succeed in Web3 with a Web2 mindset. You got to start thinking collaboration, community, not just competition. This leads me to my next question to Naveen. So Naveen, I want you to share your views on, the opportunities and challenges that you are facing in setting up your Web3 business. So if you can talk about two challenges and that big opportunity that you see for yourself in your space, I'm sure our audience is interested in hearing your story.
Yeah, I mean, there's when you sort of compare it to, why brands would jump into this space, and I ask myself the same question: why am I transitioning into a completely different industry, into Web3? There's a lot of opportunities here. There's the one aspect, which is that there's a huge cultural shift, and we can all see the benefits behind it. And oh, 1 second. Sorry, Sharad, can I just go for 1 second, please?
Yeah, absolutely. I'll
Sorry.
fill in for you till you are back.
Thank you.
Yeah, cool. So the other thing, perhaps we can, change track for a while. I want to talk a little bit about inclusivity because I see in the comments box, there is traction. People believe in that. I also want to talk about gender parity because that's a subject I'm, talking a lot about in our webinars. I do find that a lot of women who are very deserving are kind of getting left behind because they feel blockchain is tech stuff or somehow, it's all too technical. And I don't believe it is, right? Because there are enough blockchain programmers already out there. There are enough developers. We need leaders. We need leaders with a good head who can think of a business model, who can create a team around it, and who can, implement it right. And women are great through my own experience in terms of taking charge and making things happen. So I'm going to go to Janelle on her opinion on inclusivity and how this gender parity, this gender gap can be bridged. And we try to do it in our own way on all our panels. If you see, we always have more women than men. It's not coincidental, it's intentional. And we like to keep it that way. So over to you, Janelle.
So Sharad, this is why you're an incredibly smart man. Obviously, you're very, very aware of the situation and very much trying to put women at the forefront because, to your point, it's not that much of a shift. We always talk about a big shift from Web2 to Web3. It's honestly not that big of a shift if you think about it. So the reason why I say that is, for example, our educational sessions for women in particular is 75 minutes. And at the end of the 75 minutes, most women walk out with an understanding of, okay, what is Web3, from blockchain to NFTs to the whole gamut, digital wallets, all of it. But they also have an understanding of how they can apply their skill set in Web2 to Web3, because it's not that big of a transition. And quite honestly, there needs to be both of them in place right now. During the transition period, we need Web2 in order to transition to Web3. And so long as Web2 is enabling Web3, that's what we really need to see more of. So it just has to be more of an enabler than kind of a sticking point. But to your point about diversity and inclusion, this is the thing with Web2, just being in the tech industry for as long as I've been, we've been trying to rectify the situation of a lack of diversity from a female perspective, from an art perspective, from a cultural perspective, for almost 20 years now. We still haven't been able to really scratch that surface. Web3, again, is a chance to reset that. And it is an early adopter stage right now. So it's early enough where we can actually get the right players at the table and have a lot more inclusivity within, because Web3 is all about inclusivity, have a lot more inclusivity at the table and actually build something that's very different, that actually solves the problem of the past. So that's the other thing I want to bring to everyone's attention with regards to Web3. We should actually be thinking about solving societal problems. So if it's waste, if it's exclusivity, whatever the societal problems may be, we need the cognitive diversity at the table in order to solve these societal problems. So we need the female perspective. We have men and women on this planet. Both are equally incredibly important to everything we build, because we're building for everybody, for humanity. So we have to have all the perspectives at the table. It's incredibly important. And not just men and women, obviously, there's also the arts and culture. Arts and culture is a very big deal to have at the table, because that's what brings, the less tech world with us. And we have to bring that world with us, because there's a lot of beauty in art. There's a lot to share in art. And even if you think about musicals, I'm a massive fan of musicals. I would love to see Les Mis as a musical in the metaverse one day that's accessible to everybody, because everybody should have access to arts and culture. And the metaverse is a way that we're going to be able to bridge these gaps globally as well. So it's a place where we can all come together, have meaningful discussions without the screen separating us. We can actually be sitting next to each other, having that conversation, enjoying being in the metaverse, but having some very, very meaningful conversations where everybody should be included. So the cognitive diversity piece is not a question, in my opinion. It has to be there in order to build something that's meaningful and that's good, and that will be good for everybody across the globe. We can't leave anybody behind. That's the whole idea.
Thanks, Janelle, for your insights. I ditto that 100%. I second you on that. Naveen is back. He had some delivery at the door. He said, thanks, Naveen, for keeping it real.
Thank you. My dog goes crazy every time someone approaches the front door. We were talking about opportunities and difficulties. I mean, for me, you know, having a completely non-tech background is a real difficulty because, as you know, from your glossary that you put together, there's so much jargon to learn. You've only got to listen to, and I tune in for whatever reason. I tune into Kevin Riedel's Friday night chats, discussions, and you know, I don't know half of what he's talking about, but I just find it super fascinating. I've spoken to Kevin a couple of times, kind of off the forum, but there's loads to learn. I think for someone like myself, you know, in my 40s, there's a really exciting opportunity to get involved into the tech world, something that's never really appealed to me, but in a really meaningful way. And I think this technology delivers that. You know, blockchain technology alone, which is obviously, as we know, one sphere of kind of Web3, it just has so many applications which will benefit our lives moving forward. So that's why, and my project's based around authenticity of assets. And you know, it was a real life situation that led me to kind of that eureka moment where I thought, actually, nothing like this exists. And I see blockchain as being the bridge which kind of fills this gap at the moment.
Yeah, cool. Dr. Martha, you want to add to the business aspect of Web3? What should brands be doing to embrace Web3?
Yeah, just maybe to add on to the previous one, not to the
Sure.
inclusive factor, because I think we have explored that, but more about all the tech jargon and so on. So I do think if we can all be a bit like Apple, where everything is so intuitive, and we have seen that actually in games. So Axie Infinity has been played by all generations in the Philippines. So if you look at some of the families who have done it from 1890 to very, very young, just on one user account, because they made their money with that. But you can see if you have something very, very easy and intuitive, you don't really have to worry about all the tech jargon. And I do think for brands, that's also one of the tasks to make this experience seamless, as we already say in the digital transformation, but also for the metaverse and meaningful. So the question brands will need to ask themselves is, what is the added value we have? Is it just very fancy now to be in the metaverse, or can I actually add value to what I bring to customers? And that's, for me, the first and most important questions brands should ask themselves. And then also, as we have seen, for example, with Lego is brilliant, because Lego, we all know when we were kids, and Lego has really the mindset of children education. And they traveled this to Minecraft. Minecraft, in my view, is one of the best virtual worlds, because you can create there, you can work with others, you can connect. So it resembles very much like a little metaverse by itself. And everyone who has played Minecraft, myself not, but a lot of my nephews, and in particular the boys, again, not the girls. But it is really about that point that Lego also has made. I want to educate children, and I use all the tools in my environment. So they have Lego ideas, so you can come up with your own ideas. So that goes also towards creator economy, like we see it now. You bring everyone in, and we have seen now NFTs in a last couple of months have been sold at tremendous prices, but now people are giving NFTs for free, because they say the value of the NFT, you have seen that zero NFT, is more about creating derivatives and network effects so that all users become creators. So these kind of things are beautiful. And we have spoken about Nike before. Nike is the one, in my view, who they always have magic is in the air. And this is also what they live. So they're really trying to make your life enjoyable, while it's also doing sports experiences in the metaverse, in virtual and real, and they combine it very nicely. So for me, this is an absolute showcase. If you look at Bored Ape, they are amazing because they also created an ecosystem, but there is very much about the club. Yeah, so it's very much about not being inclusive, can also have a certain appeal for certain brands. But this is something maybe I personally find not that interesting, but I find it on the other hand very interesting because they have all these cases in the ecosystem. Yeah, so they have the other side. They also provide for land. You can buy, you can build, like in Roblox. They have also derivatives where you own it. You can play as a Hollywood star with your Bored Ape. If for people who don't know, this is funny Bored Ape looking. So there are tons of use cases they have created, and the core for that is really the community. And if we take this aspect of how to create a community, that's the second aspect for brands to think about. Today, community is the biggest asset you can have.
Yes, we'll talk about community building in a bit. Naveen has his hand up, so I'm going to go to Naveen.
Yeah, just an extension of what Dr. Martha was just saying, and what I was saying previously, like Web3, the technology behind it, although I don't know a lot about it, it kind of feeds into, it becomes an enabler for so much that brands are trying to achieve nowadays. So, sustainability, for example, like every major brand on the planet is working on the strategy to reduce their carbon emissions. Whether they're doing it for the right reason or not is separate, or they're doing it because it's trendy to do it. But everyone's working on it, and they want to be recognized as more sustainable. And so, we're moving from proof of work to proof of stake. And I read an article yesterday actually about energy consumption of producing an NFT, how it's equivalent to like the average American household for a day. And it was kind of putting this bad spin on the production, on energy consumption of production of NFTs. But then when you look at that in the context of supply chain, and you think, well, okay, but what's the energy consumption of producing, I don't know, like a collection of clothes and shipping them around the world, and then a percentage of those clothes having to end up in landfill because they're not sold, So I think there's a payoff there. But Dr. Martha's right as well. The relevance, brands need to kind of get to know the consumer at a deeper level beyond the sort of the data points and the metrics. Understanding some of the terminology is important, because whilst I don't understand all of it, and a lot of consumers don't understand all of it, there is the kind of buzzwords that we all kind of hear over and over again. So brands need to start using that as a transition from Web2 to Web3 in their kind of marketing strategy, and also starting to understand consumers' kind of ethical stance and their ability to accept the technology. Because again, I always refer back to luxury, but one thing I keep asking myself is, do luxury consumers want to use Web3? They might know about it, they might have no interest in using it. So here's me kind of busy building this platform, this Web3 platform for storing luxury digitals, but does my consumer want to use it? And they're not going to want to use it if it's kind of, set up a MetaMask wallet, connect it here, and et cetera, et cetera. So there's a real kind of transition between Web 2 and Web 3, which I think the diehard people are like, yeah, get rid of Web 2 and we are fully Web 3 yet. But obviously, as we know, Web 3 is ... because it's still evolving. But from my perspective, there's definitely we're definitely still more Web 2 than Web 3, because the technology is not keeping up with our aspirations. We've got great aspirations about, sitting down in the evening, putting a headset on and going shopping in the metaverse, whereas you can't really do that in practice at the moment. Intellectual property. So again, Dr. Martha touched on the legal aspect of it, and there's always refer back to luxury, as I said, but there's a Nike versus StockX case, which is, I think, still going on at the moment, about using the Nike's trademark and capitalizing off Nike's goodwill. And, I think there's it's an interesting one, actually, because I can't see the difference personally between that and having a shop and having a hoarding with a Nike logo on it. But it's because it's a new space, it's untested, brands are able to kind of test those principles now. And then finally, I think strategy, the brands that are kind of, like Tiffany & Co made 13 million off a collection last week or week before last.
Yeah.
And that's quite appealing, for a brand to say, well, look, we can make near on between 10 and 20 million by doing an NFT collection. But not having that kind of longer term digital roadmap and seeing how that collection fits into the DNA of the brand. I think especially luxury, because so much of luxury USP is built on the brand's DNA, it could be quite damaging. So it just has to be done kind of holistically.
Yeah. Okay, I see that Laura and Janelle have their hands up, so I'm going to go to Laura first and then to Janelle.
I'm just going to be very quick. I think Naveen kind of pointed out something that was really interesting and something that we have to talk about also. There are some Web3 people who are loud voices, obviously, on LinkedIn and so on and so forth. And often I always hear this where they said, if a good Web3 strategy is when the people who are using Web3 don't actually know they're using Web3. And I don't agree with that at all. I think that a lot of blockchain technology, especially with decentralization, you have to at some point know something about the technology, because, for example, when I first started using my crypto wallet to buy digital assets, I've got scammed a few times, okay, because I sent the crypto to a wrong, for example, and I'm scrambling trying to figure out, like, did I do it wrong or did I actually did it correctly? And I'm trying to figure out how am I supposed to get like a refund of a wrong transaction. And a lot of the times, and if you ask a lot of blockchain experts, these things aren't trackable. I mean, you can't actually get a refund because everything is decentralized. Once the transaction has been approved, the only way to contact the person who you sent the wrong crypto to, you have to send another coded message in another crypto transaction to have that refund back. So in a way, the user experience is still lacking. And if you don't have a little bit of understanding of how the technology works and how the technology is built upon, I think it's very, very disingenuous to say that, oh, the best Web3 strategy is when your customers don't know you're using Web3. I don't agree with that at all. I think that at some point people will need that education, will need to learn how to use their crypto wallet, how to make a transaction, what does a transaction mean, what if you do make a mistake and how does it work, and so on and so forth. So yeah, I think maybe
well taken. And to be fair to Web3, you know, everything is so new, it's evolving, it'll take time to mature. UI UX interface is poor, but again, you know, it's early days, so it's good to be leading the space. And I actually want to applaud all the members of our audience. We have 108 in the room. Clearly, all of you are leaders because, you know, you are participating in this discussion. And I'm guessing it's a couple of years before Metaverse, Web3, NFT will be mainstream. And these meetings already are being held in the Metaverse instead of on Zoom. Zoom, I consider Web2. Metaverse events are Web3. You can have avatars, you can have interactions, you can have chill out zones, you can have networking lounges. Everything is coming to life. I'm going to go to Janelle. Janelle, I also want you to talk about your experience with NFTs because you know a thing or two, having launched your own collection. So I want to know what success you are having with that and what's your long-term vision.
Sure. Yeah, a couple things. I want to touch on what Laura had just mentioned and also on something that Naveen had mentioned too. So Laura, 100% agree with you. Nothing makes your heart jump out of your chest more than transferring from one digital wallet to another, knowing that nothing can be changed. But actually, that's what women come to us with. That's actually probably the sticking point, and actually being able to walk them through how to set up a digital wallet and how to transact is actually a very big deal, because that's the first step into getting into this world. So it is a very big sticking point that we try to solve through our sessions as well. Naveen, you mentioned something about energy. You know, I always bring this up. What about travel? Why aren't we talking about how much energy and CO2 carbon emissions is emitted into the atmosphere when we travel by plane? That is one thing that the metaverse will be able to help solve. Obviously, there's energy being emitted there too, but it's a matter of good energy that we need versus bad energy that's going to hurt in our environment. And as Sharad mentioned, we're so early in all of this that there will be solutions for it. We should be building solutions for it. And if you're a big brand thinking of entering into the space, the one thing you should be mindful of is not just obviously how you can help accelerate your business. How can you help through the business, obviously, that you have solve some of these societal problems. For example, if you're an oil and gas company, you're moving into Web3, first thing you should be thinking about is CO2 emissions and how to solve for that problem. That is obviously something that's very much taunting the energy industry. So these are opportunities. I see them as opportunities to do better in the world of Web3. And then the IP issues. So obviously NFTs, the beauty behind NFTs, it started as art. I always talk about it, how it started as art, because art started a lot of historical revolutions, if you think about it, but now it's moved to the art of the possible. So with regards to NFTs, it's an authenticity process. So not just art, it'll be used for everything. Time Magazine has issued their first magazine on the blockchain. This is an example of where we're going to go with magazines, with books, with marketplaces are going to be very different. Insurance companies are going to be issuing NFTs for our belongings on their own blockchain eventually. These will all start happening. So from an IP and a rights perspective, that's the whole idea behind it. The whole idea is to tie this digital asset to someone. And that's what we should be thinking about. How can we use these digital assets to tie ownership or authenticity to a person or a thing? With regards to my NFT collection, so I did it very differently. So our collection is intended to be much more of a long-term vision. The idea is, so first and foremost, I actually got it authenticated by a third party. So I went through a company called Eureka, which is a local Web3 startup here in the Waterloo region, but their whole mission is to authenticate art. Obviously, art is, the authentication is established on the blockchain, provenance is established on the blockchain, but what they've done is actually go through our art because it's all been digitally hand drawn. And I'll explain a little bit more about that, and authenticated that it's our art. So to Dr. Martha's point about the apes, and the bored apes, if you see, there's been a lot of scams and derivatives from a lot of these very big collection, because they're using generative art, but what they're doing is stripping layers of certain art and they're reusing those layers to generate new art. So what I've done is actually gone through a process where authenticity is tied back to our collection. So we actually launched 2022 NFTs. And it's on OpenSea, it's on our website as well. The idea behind it is to enable women into the world of Web3, but anybody obviously is welcome to be a part of our community. We are building our community, but organically doing so. And the idea is that 10% of these proceeds would also go towards supporting an organization here in Canada called Civic Action to help empower female leaders. So Civic Action helps to build more inclusive and diverse cities. So obviously I want more female leaders. So we're helping to enable that as well. But it's also, we're building a very unique community for women to transact and to have a leg up. I can't give up too much information before the big reveal, a leg up when interacting with each other and transacting with one another. And then it would also give visibility into the incubator that we're building as well. So for a lot of these collections, the whole idea back then was build up the hype on Discord, which I have chosen not to do, and then launch, and then you sell out in days or minutes or whatever it might be. That to me is not the way I wanted to go. We wanted to obviously build our community and have more of a long-term vision, because what the bear market has done is pushed a lot of these actors who built their collection based on hype right out the door, because no one's showing up right now. So that is the beauty of actually what we're going through right now. The bear market is a chance to push out all the bad actors, all the ones who are not there with the right intentions, and to enable those who want to build more at this time. You're on mute, Sharad.
Yeah, sorry. Great insights, Janelle. There's a question from Aditya Mani, who's a friend of ours in the community. He wants to know from the panelists what you think about custodial wallets. Who wants to take that question? Janelle?
Yeah, sure. I can start. Look, I don't know that, and I talk about Web3 centering the tech around the human as opposed to the human working for the tech. If we can figure that out, I think that's a big deal. But I don't think any one industry or any one organization needs to be pushed out during Web3. We just have to pivot our mindset and figure out how to work very differently. So with regards to custodial wallets, if you think about the older demographic, for example, they're going to have a hard time moving into this space if it's not, maybe through a bank, hypothetically. And if I have certain crypto assets that I don't want to have stored on my hard wallet, that I would rather store with a bank that's a crypto asset, that, it might be an opportunity to have them kind of come in. This is what they do. They do cyber, they do security, they do cyber. The idea is not to wash any one industry out necessarily. It's to get them to pivot their mindset. So I don't know that it's necessarily a bad thing. I have a view on if we're all building for the right reasons, then we should all be at the table. And the role of government, I know a lot of people have very strong views of government in the world of Web3. I personally think we need government in Web3 to help with regulation, to help with framework. We need these systems in place to help push out the bad actors, because there are bad actors right now, and there will be until there's regulation. And we absolutely need to get to a place where we can interact easily without worrying about having bad actors in the space with us necessarily. So that's my personal take. I don't know if any of the other panelists feel any differently.
No, I think you've answered it pretty well. And also I want to highlight there have been a lot of questions in the chat, which I see are being answered by our panelists as we go along. Christina, who's also a friend of the show, wants us to comment about this guy called Jack, who's talking about Web5. I think you know who I'm referring to. Does anybody care to comment on that? I mean, I don't understand too much about Web5 because I'm still struggling with Web3. But hey, anybody in the panel wants to comment on that? You can now. Now is your time. Any takes on Web5?
I'll do it.
Of ourselves? Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, Web5 is more.
Martha's doing.
Okay, sorry about this. And we can combine, because again, if we define those things which don't exist, then you can ask 5 people and they have plenty of answers. Yeah. So just for the audience, Jack Dorsey is the previous CEO of Twitter. He's now the CEO of a company called The Block. So he has now raised in June, I believe, that he is directly moving to Web5. And if you see the evolution which Jared described from now we own, then it's the next evolution is the web of thoughts, the emotional web, which he is not really describing, but this is a natural evolution. And Jared, as you said, we are not even fully at Web3 and we don't know exactly Web4, and now it's Web5. So it's something also he was trying to describe with digital identity, which is more kind of Web3. So a lot of people have also criticized him and said, okay, what is so different from Web3 if you really have a fully blown Web3? And I would say we can expect that Web3 will develop further, that everything is connected. We see that with the Internet of Things, which you probably, the tech expert will talk about. We see that with everything, but there are very nice also graphics to show this evolution from the inner circle, Web 1, Web 2, Web 3, Web 4, which is basically thoughts, emotions connected. So think about all the science fiction movies you have seen where everything is interconnected and you teleport and you don't need you need infrastructure, but not that you see it. Yeah. So over to you.
Thanks, Doctor. That was a good explanation. Before I come to Perez, he has his hands up. I'm going to request our audience to put in the chat where you think you are from 0 to 10 scale in terms of your knowledge about Web3. Some of you I know had, earlier told us where you were. I'm very keen to know how people are progressing. Naveen, I saw your answer. Okay, you're kidding. All right, so let's go to Perez.
Yes, thank you. I think this is actually part of the problem, the terminology, or what is Web3 or Web5 or the Metaverse. My kids, they're teenagers. They don't think of the Metaverse, but they are users of, immersive social platforms. And I think that's we need to move away from being so strict or so purist about the terminology, but actually focus on the importance of the value of applying that technology. And what Laura was saying, okay, I do understand that people, they need to be aware of the risks of using this technology. When it is our, let's say, obligation to help them, navigate in a secure, a safe way. And that because there is a lot of scams, there's a lot of rugs. So actually it is a minefield. but they don't users. If users need to be too techy to use the potential benefits of Web3, we're never going to get mass adoption. So the user, the UX, the user experience, the actual helping them navigate safely, making things a lot more accessible, and focusing on the benefits rather than the actual tech is what will actually help, the decentralized internet to become part of our daily lives.
Yeah, that's a great summary, Perez. And now, since we are just 4 minutes away from closing time, I'm going to go around the room for your closing remarks, starting with Laura Penn. 60 seconds only. Laura, closing thoughts.
So I think, generally speaking, Web3 is definitely, from my point of view, at the very early development and adoption phase. There is still a lot to do, a lot to learn. There are some great companies that are engaging in Web3 and they're trying really hard. But I think some of the easiest execution is with NFTs or with connecting crypto wallets, either to do sales in cryptocurrencies, or also token gating, where it allows you to access certain benefits through owning certain tokens. Blockchain technology is obviously developing, and it's been around for a long time, but people just don't quite understand it. I totally agree with Pere in the sense that it's something that we kind of have to understand in terms of the risks, but not really the technology, because I don't expect everyone to know blockchain. I mean, when I talk to my father, he knows a little bit of how blockchain works and the concept of it, but he doesn't have to know how to use Solidity to go on Ethereum and so on and so forth, for example. I think we didn't talk about DAOs, but we would love to talk about that in the future. But then we also talked about gaming. So generally speaking, I think we've talked about a lot of different things that companies can do to start getting themselves familiar with Web3. And I hope that a lot of what we talked about is something that is going to inspire you to do a little bit more research. And obviously you can definitely connect with us to find out more. I have one more last tip. If you don't use Twitter, I strongly recommend you to download Twitter. And if you want to learn more about Web3, there are a few people to follow, but there is one person that I really want to kind of push forward, because I've learned quite a lot from this person. And his Twitter handle is very funny. It's NFT God. So it's basically, if you go into the search bar and you go to NFT_God or just NFT God, you'll find him, and he'll tell you and also give you a roadmap as to how to start your career in NFTs or Web3 and kind of learn a little bit more. He also has a really wonderful thread and links to all these different resources. And so if you don't have Twitter, download it today and basically follow NFT God.
Thank you, Laura. That's useful. I'm going to do that after this show. Follow Twitter God. NFT God, sorry. Yeah. Janelle, closing thoughts.
Sure. Yes. So I think I'm just going to reiterate some of the things I've already said. So this is an opportunity for all of us. And I do want to encourage us all to be thinking very differently, develop different mindsets around the world that we've entered into. The tech is here, no matter how much people try to debunk it or say that it's here, temporarily. It's here to stay. We already know that it's here. People are using it. We might as well use it to build something better. It shouldn't go anywhere, to be completely honest with you. And a lot of us won't let it go anywhere, just because it's incredible tech, and it is going to change the way we live, the way we interact. And we should use this opportunity not only to build better systems and ecosystems within our environment, our countries, but across the globe. So I do want to encourage that as well. And I completely agree with the other panelists with regards to just adding another layer, Web 5 or whatever that might be. We don't even need to be thinking about that stuff right now. We just need to be thinking about how can we actually get into the world of Web 3. That is the tech that we have. That is the tech that we're using, and it's incredible. So here to help in any way. Obviously, I'll put in my our company address here as well. Please reach out to us, especially if you're a woman trying to get into the Web3 world or understand what it's about. Please do sign up for our sessions. And then if you're interested in our collection, that's also on our website. And then our incubator is to be announced soon. There'll be some new announcements coming our way. So thank you very much, Sharad, for having me on this panel.
Absolutely. Dr. Martha, your closing comments, please.
Yeah, thanks a lot. I make it very short, also as a recommendation to the people who are on the call, that every one of you should try and fail, but never fail to try. So it's very important that you experience. And obviously, we are all here on the panel there to help you with that. We give you resources you can link to. And I don't want to miss to say you can also come to our events of the Metaverse Academy, experience spatial, as I said at the beginning, or do some of the classes. We have a Web3 strategist. We have all classes, and we always love to hear your views and engage with you. It's in the Metaverse, so you can listen to resources which we share anyway, but I think try it out like you did today. It was very brave of some of you. I've seen someone had -10. I find it amazing and fantastic that you were joining us. So thanks a lot, and very much looking forward working with all of you in the future.
Naveen, you have the last word. Perez, you got your closing comments, or should I come back to you? Yeah, so let's do Naveen and let's go to Perez. Naveen, 60 seconds, please.
Can I just use my 60 seconds to answer a question that's been asked of me?
Yes, absolutely.
Luar Furnish, you said, do you see virtual apparel trumping physical apparel in desirability? She calls an Adidas sneaker being sold out in China during the pandemic lockdown. And I think my thoughts on this kind of sum up my opinion of the space at the moment, really. I think if the digital has a link to a physical, then it has value. I think if it unlocks features to, like, I don't know, limited drops, etc., then it has features. I think digital alone apparel at this stage in time, in 10 years' time, my answer would be different. But at this stage in time, like we've had meetings in spatial, right? We had a meeting in spatial last week, and this is a lot easier. Like, I love the metaverse, but it's glitchy. And I'm not saying this to make a funny comment, but we had a meditation session last week in spatial, and it was the most stressful thing ever for me, because I was clicking on the video and I couldn't get in, and all these people around me, like, chilling out because apparently there's a video playing which I can get access to. And so, it was really, for me, like, the meetings I've had in the spatial have been quite glitchy. I love the environment, especially when I put AR goggles on. It's just, the immersiveness is incredible, but this is still a lot easier for me. So digital only apparel, one day it's going to be, great. Right now, I'd rather wear them on my feet, to be honest.
Yeah, thanks, Naveen. Naveen, you are in a bit of a soup because Oliver is in the room and he heard your comments about meditation in the middle.
No,
so
Oliver, I'm sure it would have been super relaxed, but I couldn't get access to the video.
Okay, on that note, let's go to Perez and then we'll wind up. Perez? 60 seconds.
Right. So my advice for brands and professionals is, okay, don't treat this as a campaign. Don't treat this as a way of grabbing a headline. Do get yourself trained, do some learning, before you go into it, because once you, start building a community in Web3, it is for the long term. But at the same time, be aware that we will no longer have the luxury of 20 years for digital transformation. The space, business is going to change so rapidly. It is already changing very rapidly. So yes, well, you have to learn, and you have to think about what is your strategy going there. You need to start exploring this, very soon. And I see it for everyone else is our last chance to create a better digital society for everyone. There is a better way of doing business. Don't be afraid of shared value models. Don't be afraid of, really opening your minds about the potential benefits of our future decentralized society.
Thank you,
in
Perez.
the metaverse.
Yeah, it's time to say all the thank yous. And I see, Naveen, you are patching up with Oliver in the chat, which is good. All right. So on a serious note, well, we've had an engaging conversation, to say the least. So many learnings, so many takeaways. A note for the audience on the housekeeping part: there will be a recording and a podcast of this webinar available tomorrow same time on onlywebinars.com. Do register for our next webinar, which is happening on 23rd August. We have a new panel, a new topic, and we are going to discuss about the metaverse, how we can build it ethical and all inclusive. And so do join us then again. And I want to guide our audience towards this post that came up a couple of days back on LinkedIn by a dear friend of mine. His name is Jamie Brett. He's from UK, runs a company called MetaHub. I'm like giving him a shout out. His post is entitled, Web2 was about trust. Web3 is all about truth. I encourage you to find this post on LinkedIn, read up on this, and follow Jamie Brett to stay in touch with all the latest stuff that's happening in this space. On that note, I want to thank each one of my panelists, Laura Pan, Janelle Shalui, Dr. Martha Bockenfield, Naveen Semi, Perez Nino. Thank you for your contributions. See you on the other side. And thank you, audience, for being here and investing your 65 minutes with us. Bye for now and cheers.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Super interesting. Bye-bye.